People often come to us and ask, when and how should I start preparing for retirement? It's a great question that we're going to talk about today. And unfortunately, it doesn't have a clear answer always. So rather than give you a specific age or an age range that you should start preparing for retirement, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we think through this and how we encourage our clients to think through preparing for retirement. Because here's the reality. If you are working, you are either preparing for retirement or not, no matter what age you are. If you're in your 20s and you signed up for your 401k, you at least on the side have thought about preparing for retirement because you are putting money into a retirement account. And vice versa, if you're 64 years old, you definitely have thought about retirement and you probably have more questions than answers. So I want to give you some things to think about as you get through different age ranges that might be helpful for you as you prepare for retirement. But let's start with what we don't want to see. Sometimes we'll get a call from someone and they'll say, hey, I would love for you to help manage my investments, handle our retirement, do our financial planning, all of those fun financial things that we love to do for people. And we're happy to help. But it's very difficult when they say, oh, and by the way, I retired last week. That's a difficult situation because, as we've talked about in previous videos, retirement is all about tools and levers that you can pull and push and change and create this plan for your future. And when you are already retired, most of those are in place and can't be changed at all. Some can, and we do help people who are already in retirement. But if possible, we want people working on their retirement plan far in advance of their actual retirement date. Let's talk through a few things to think about at different age groups. And also, this will apply depending on what stage of life you are in. Remember, everything is very specific for you as a person. Things will change depending on your personal scenario, your goals, timelines, demographics, family situation, all of that fun stuff. Retirement planning, financial planning in general is an unbelievably specific thing, so you need something custom tailored to you. Today's goal is simply to give you a few things to think about and have a framework to work from, something you can build on until you are able to potentially work with a retirement planning advisor. Let's start with the first thing we always have people look at. What we really like to see is for people to have some knowledge, have information that is specific to their circumstances. The best place to start is how much you are saving and where that will lead. If you've heard us discuss retirement planning, we want it to be as specific as possible. And unfortunately, when it comes to retirement planning, whether it's contributing to a 401k, saving money in a brokerage account, investing, for instance, let's say that they decide to put 6% of pay from their paycheck into their 401k through their 401k at work. Sounds like a great idea, right? And it might be, but unfortunately, a percentage of pay is not enough information. We don't know whether or not that is going to help them meet their goals. And if we don't know whether it's going to help them meet their goals, then they definitely don't know whether it's going to help them meet their goals. So we always encourage people to be as specific as possible with numbers and with goals. And that way you can make adjustments over time to ensure, or at least set yourself up for the best opportunity to meet those goals and retire the way you want to. We'll start with what typically happens in your 40s. For whatever reason, when you enter your 40s, you often start to think about retirement more than you have in the past. You are now deeply into your career, and around the corner, even though it might be 20 or 25 years away, you realize that retirement is coming and you need to plan for it. And maybe you've started saving, maybe you haven't, whatever the case might be, you typically start to think about it more once you hit your 40s. We want them to understand how much they are putting away right now, and if all things considered, they continue doing that until they retire, what that will lead to. So here's an exercise that you can walk through, and you can use online calculators to help you figure out these numbers. Let's say that you are contributing 6% of pay, just to pick a number out of thin air. You're contributing 6% of pay to your 401k. What we want you to do is to translate that, first of all, into dollars. Pull up a statement, look at the dollar amount, and use that dollar amount in a calculator and calculate based on how much you are saving now, how much you have saved up until this point. If you continue to do that for the next however many years it is, let's say it's 25 years, how much money will you have when you retire? What this requires you to do is to set some concrete goals, starting with what year you plan on retiring. Know that this will probably change. Very rarely does somebody set a retirement year and then it happens exactly the way they want it to happen. It might be earlier, it might be later due to many reasons, but that's okay. What we're trying to do is to put a framework in place to build a foundation that you can work towards and work off of as you are building towards retirement. So if you want to start with, hey, I think I'm going to retire at 65, that's a fine place to start because it gives you something to work off of. And you can look at the calculator online. There's lots of them. They all do the same thing. Plug in the numbers, and it will tell you if you continue doing what you're doing now and we assume average rates of return on the investments, which is an assumption we have to make. And we assume inflation rates, which is another thing we have to assume because it does affect your account. How much money will you have in retirement? That's the first step we want you to take, but we want you to take it a little bit farther than that. Some people will look at that and they will see the amount and they go, oh, sweet, I'm going to have $2 million. Oh no, I'm going to have $100,000. I don't think that's enough. We're not able yet to tell you whether that's enough or too much or too little or any of those things, but you need to translate that dollar figure into how much are you going to be able to pay yourself with that money. That's a key figure that most people miss. Think about what retirement is. You are transitioning from what we call in the finance world accumulation stage. That's just a fancy word that means you are saving money. And as long as you're working and you're working towards retirement, you are in accumulation stage. The needs are very specific for that stage, and the primary need is to build assets, to build up the amount of money that you have. But when you cross over that threshold and you enter retirement, you are now in the distribution phase. The distribution phase is a fancy way of saying you get to pay yourself money from the money that you've saved and hope it doesn't run out for the rest of your life. It can be rather daunting, but with preparation, it does not have to be. And it starts with having knowledge, having information. So you put in the information, you calculate how much money you are probably going to have. I put that in air quotes because you know it's not going to be exactly that amount. Things will change over time. And then you convert that amount of money into how much you can pay yourself on an annual basis for the rest of your life. This will give you a better understanding of how you are doing. And if that calculation is a little bit more difficult, you might want to work with an advisor to help you walk through it. Some online calculators will do that for you, others will not. And there are more assumptions and more math that has to be done for that figure. Let's say that one of the calculators does give you an amount and it is far less than you need to live on for the rest of your life. In your opinion, you might need to make some changes to how much you're saving now. It will also allow you in the calculator to put in different numbers and see how the impact of more savings or less savings in your 401k or IRA or any account that you might have, how that will impact your future and your ability to draw an income off your retirement accounts in retirement. So in your 40s, that's what we want people to be doing. Ideally, this is the age that you start working with a financial advisor. Again, it's not a rule. It's just a rule of thumb. It's a preference because there's a lot of information that goes into this planning process. And the more time that you have, the more of these levers and tools you can use, the more levers you can pull and push and make adjustments along the way to hopefully get as close to your ideal retirement as you possibly can. In your 40s, if nothing else, that's where I would start. Let's say that you get into your 50s and even 60s. You're a little bit deeper into your career. You're really starting to think about retirement right now. I promise you that if you are 50 years of age or older, you have thought very seriously about what retirement might look like, when it might happen, all of those fun things. When we enter our 50s, you want to start thinking about it in a little different way. First, you want to get even more specific with your goal. The numbers that you were working off before, you want to continuously update those numbers. And when I say continuously, I simply mean on a regular basis. This is not something you want to do every week, every day, every few weeks, but about every 6 months, plug in the new numbers, update the new numbers if you don't have a financial advisor who's doing this for you, and see how they are doing. How much progress are you making towards meeting your retirement planning goals? It will give you something to work off of. And if you get into this process and you get really nervous or you have a lot of questions, that's the time you want to connect with a financial advisor. And even if you don't work with them, at least have a conversation. And once you enter your 50s and you have some of this information, there are a couple of other things that I encourage you to think through. First is we want you to start thinking about what we call your number. What is your number? Your number is the amount of money that you need to live every month in retirement. And this is a hard thing for people to think through because oftentimes they're not doing a lot of budgeting, they're not doing a lot of cash flow analysis, and they really don't have a firm handle on how much money they spend. That's okay. That's part of the exercise. But you need to start figuring out how much am I going to actually spend in retirement. And the reason we have people look at this in their 50s or even in their 60s is because oftentimes, unless they've had children later, their expenses are more fixed. They don't have as many extra expenses as they did when they were in their 40s. And oftentimes their income is much more stable. So they have a better idea of what things look like, what their savings rates will be, and what their expenditures will be. And this is really important because along with that number, we want them to start thinking about what retirement should look like in regards to everything that is not financial. In our world, we call that the people, the plan, and the purpose. Who are you going to be hanging out with? What are you going to be doing on a day-to-day basis? And how are you going to find your fulfillment when you don't have work to fill that gap during the day? These two things work together. When it comes to your number, we need that information because by the time you retire, you are going to have a set amount of money that you can then draw income off of. And yes, it will fluctuate based on the investments continuously for the rest of your life, but there's a base there that you will begin to pay yourself from. When we want people looking at what their number will be, we're not looking for the ramen noodle number, we call it. We're not looking for the, hey, if we just don't buy anything and we don't do anything and we just sit in our house and stare at each other, then this is how much we can live off. We don't want that number because that's not the reality. The goal is not to have you spend as little as possible. The goal is to find the appropriate amount of money that you need to satisfy your needs, pay your bills, and live the life you want in retirement. That's what we want to shoot off of. Now, we might not be able to hit that number, or we might be way over or way under, but we have to start with something. So we want a reasonable amount of money that you need to live off of every month. And what this does is it really has you start to examine your values when it comes to how you spend your money. Here's what I mean by that. Oftentimes, people think that they're spending money one way, when in reality, they're spending money in a lot of ways they don't even realize. Maybe they spend much more money on going out to eat than they thought they did. Maybe they thought they were a car person, so they have $2,000 in car payments. And then they look at it and they realize, you know what? I don't really know if I am a car person. I don't know if I want to spend $2,000 a month on car payments. Maybe they think they need a lake house and they realize they don't need a lake house. Or maybe they think they need a lake house and they realize it is absolutely important to them. It's where they spend all of the time with their family and their kids and their future grandkids, and they want to make sure they prioritize that in the plan. That's okay. This is not a shame game. We're not here to tell you not to spend money, not to pursue your dreams, not to do the things that you love to do. But this exercise typically allows people to figure out what is really important to them when it comes to their spending. And what we find is that oftentimes people realize that some of the things they're spending money on aren't actually that important to them, and they would rather cut those things out of their life and focus their money on the things that do provide them value and joy in life. So that's a good thing. We want them thinking about the money, we want them thinking about the number, and we want them actually beginning to think about what retirement will look like, what they're going to do on a day-to-day basis. Who are they going to spend time with? Are they going to work at all? Are they going to work part-time? Are they going to volunteer? Are they going to go work at their church? What are they going to do? What are their hobbies? Who are their people? What's their plan? This exercise allows people to get very specific with what retirement is going to look like, and it allows them in their mind and heart to feel what retirement will look like. The transition from work to retirement can be a very difficult one if you haven't spent time figuring these things out. Not only the side of the finances, but the living side of things with what you're going to do, who you're going to spend time with, and where your purpose is going to come from. And if you don't have both sides of that coin in place, retirement can be very challenging, and we don't want it to be. We want it to be a smooth celebration of fun into the next stage of life. So in your 50s and 60s, we want you narrowing in on the numbers, being very specific on those things. And what happens when you work with an advisor and you're working through this process, the transition on the financials begins to focus on things like your estate plan. It begins to focus on things like taxation and distributions. We begin to focus on cash flow planning, how we're going to pay that money for your salary that you're paying yourself. How are we going to pay that? Where's it going to come from? How is it going to impact your taxes? How is it going to impact your lifestyle? What things can you do? What things should you probably hold off on? Is your retirement date a good date to shoot for, or do we need to delay that a little bit, or can we move that up? We've had both scenarios happen where we have to say, hey, it's probably a good idea for you to delay your retirement a little bit. It's not the end of the world, but it might help your situation. And we've also had it where people say, you know what? I'm done. I'm ready to retire. And we run the numbers and do the things, and we're able to say, hey, we're confident in the plan that you have in place. We think you can do this. And there's so many factors that go into it that you shouldn't focus on all of them at once. But these are some key things you can think about. So when you're in your 40s, focus on your savings rates. Figure out what those savings rates are going to lead to in terms of the income you're going to have, the amount of money you're going to have at retirement, and how that will translate into paying yourself a lifestyle and a wage that you can do the things you want and pay for the bills that you need to pay for. You enter your 50s, and if you haven't done any of this and you get into your 60s, you want to get very specific on things. You want to update all of your numbers, and I would encourage you to do that every 6 months. And you really want to start thinking about your number and all of the specific things, the questions you should constantly be thinking about without worrying about them, about when you want to retire, what you're going to do when you retire, what money you are glad you're spending, what money you don't want to spend anymore. Are there debts that need to be paid off? How are you going to handle your mortgage? Do you have too many cars? Do you have not enough cars? Do you have long-term care concerns? How is your insurance? Is it going to protect you and the ones you love from risks that you might have not thought about previously? All of these questions come into play, and you really don't want to have to do this all on your own. I encourage everyone at some point, whether it's to us or someone else, to talk to a financial advisor who specializes in retirement planning. Doesn't have to be us. We'd love to talk to you. But what you'll find is there are questions that you might not be asking yourself. One of the benefits of working with an advisor who does financial planning associated with retirement, in addition to managing the investments, is to ask the right questions. And what you'll do is you set this foundation up, and then you build on top of it. And you build these layers as you're getting closer and closer to retirement. And then when you hit the final 12 to 24 months, you're getting ready to retire, all of the things in place, you should have a really firm idea of what retirement year one is going to look like. And I say year one because life changes, and inevitably, year one is the year that you figure a few things out about your plan and make adjustments. It's why we tell people you don't get a financial plan and then take it and run with it, and it keeps you ready to go for the rest of your life. Financial planning is an ongoing thing. You're constantly adjusting the plan based on your circumstances and life situations and how things are changing. Markets change, inflation rates change, taxes change, things in your life change, family situations change. It all changes all the time. The only thing certain is that there's uncertainty, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be scary. So in the 12 to 24 months leading up to retirement, then you start to envision retirement and actually put those plans into place so that when day one hits, there's not a shock to your system and you have no idea what's going on and you're encompassed with fear and excitement and uncertainty and all the things. You're going to have a little bit of uncertainty either way. It's very natural when you are shifting from one huge stage of life to another. What we want is for you to have a plan in place that allows you to be excited about this next stage. And then you spend the first 12 months living in it and it just being okay. And along the way, in that 12-month period, the first year of retirement, you make adjustments to the plan. So maybe you go, you know what? I thought I was going to be able to live on this much money, and I actually need a little bit more. And we review the plan. And at this point, we've been working on it for a long time. And most likely we can say, okay, that sounds great. We might have to say, you know what? The plan doesn't really support that. And because we don't want you to run the risk of either running out of money or having a difficult situation financially, we recommend you stay where you're at. But it's all part of this process. And usually what we find is after month 12, people settle into a rhythm. So just know all of this is normal, that you're not going to hit retirement. Everything's going to be figured out. Think about all the things that you've got to do along the way. Sign up for Social Security and analyze when that best time to do that is for you. Handle Medicare and all of those things and deal with all the prescriptions you have and the medical insurance aspect of it and changing doctors if you have to. There's a lot that goes into retiring. We're here to support our clients along the way for all of those pieces of the very huge puzzle, and just encourage you to reach out if you have any questions. We'd love to talk to you about it. It's what we do. But either way, hopefully this information gives you a few things to think about. Oftentimes, that's what we're trying to do here, is just to give you something to think about so you can ask yourself the right questions, gain information and knowledge about your specific scenario, realize that everybody is different and you have to run your own race, and begin to put a good plan in place so that you can retire the way you want to and not deal with the fear and uncertainty that often comes with that stage of retirement. So hopefully this is helpful. If you want to ask us questions or chat with us, go to the website, ellisretirement.com. We'd love to chat with you. There's a button on the top right that you can actually push and schedule a little Zoom meeting. No pressure whatsoever. We just love helping people figure this stuff out, and we'd love to talk to you if you have any interest. Hope this is helpful. We'll talk to you next time.